Hey everybody, welcome back to Havoc Maker Studio. My name is John and we are going into the second half. This is part 2 of covering the professions for the RPG that's coming out in August of 2023, Dragonbane. Now this is a updated version of the original, I believe it was, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Swedish name, but Dragons and Demons. This game has been out since 1982. I would say compared to Dungeons and Dragons, it is the second longest running RPG out there. So, and only Dungeons and Dragons probably only beat them by just a few short years. I forget what year the first Dungeons and Dragons came out, but it wasn't too long before this one. So, we already covered professions, the first 5 professions, which was the artisan, we had the bard, we had the fighter, we had the hunter, and the knight. So, we're going to wrap up with the last 5, and we're going to try to go through this fairly quick because we got a lot of ground to cover for this RPG. So, the next one is the mage. Now, this one we're going to eventually kind of revisit because it's the only class right now, or profession. I'm probably going to do that a lot, class and profession, that uses magic. So the mage definitely has that. I'd say, I'm not saying that they stole it. Definitely, I've talked about the artwork before, that European kind of Nordic art style for fantasy. We seen it in Trudvang and Vanson and a few others, and it definitely reminds me of a Gandalf from the Hobbit cartoon. There's definitely some slight similarities, mainly because it's an old man with a robe and a staff and a big long flowing beard. Now, if he would have had a long pipe that he was smoking from, I would have been like, okay, a little appropriation there. So the key abilities is not intelligence like you would imagine. The key ability here is will. The reason why will is because, well, where there's will, there's a way. The willpower is what essentially powers your spells and your heroic abilities. So it only makes sense that your primary attribute for casting spells is your willpower, which I think really makes sense. When you look at the variety of abilities that we will eventually cover in regards to spells, your ability to cast them, everything is based off your dice roll. Will does kind of come into play because you're having to withstand the titanic energies that you're going through and be able to still focus your energies and the energy into some sort of shape or form to produce an effect with your magic. So you have some animist skills, which once again we'll cover. There's you do have a big, broad range of skills depending on which direction you go with your magic. Once again, we're going to have to revisit them later on, since it is probably the broadest of, or not broadest, but the most detailed of the professions. So you have the animist, elementalist, and mentalist are, I would guess you can say, the different schools that you can choose from. And depending on that, you get a broad range of skills to choose from. Now that your heroic abilities as a mage, you don't get a heroic ability to start off with. You actually will start off with your spells. That is your heroic abilities. And you will probably be a little bit ahead of the curve in regards to your repertoire of abilities in the beginning, as opposed to the rest of your fellow players, because you start off with one spell and you get 3 magic tricks, which are kind of like, I would say, somewhere between a cantrip, for those who are familiar with that terminology from other games like Dungeons and Dragons, somewhere between a cantrip and a first level spell, somewhere in this very small window of kind of a power level. On top of that, you get your normal assortment of gear depending on what you roll. Here, I would definitely stress throughout all the character profession, when you're doing character creations, a lot of stuff you can just choose. This is one of those things with the gear. I would say allow this to be a dice roll. GMs, don't let them pick and choose. Let this one be the dice roll, a random roll, no matter what. If they get to pick everything else, let this be a random roll, because you don't want them to choose, the most opportune, because we don't know where they are in their life when they're just starting out. And a lot of good things and bad things could have happened, which leads them to having whatever gear they have. So I would keep it to a random roll. And I would also say, guys, yeah, you can roll the nicknames, but I would say don't choose a nickname. You don't give yourself a call sign. You don't give yourself the nickname. It's something that organically happens. And especially if you're just starting out, this is your first level character, you're just starting out playing this game, you haven't really done anything to earn a nickname or a call sign or, a great epic title. Just let the thing happen naturally, right? It's a lot more fun that way, in my personal opinion. Then we got the Mariner. So we're going to keep going on with these professions. The Mariner is kind of an oddball, and we'll kind of cover why it's an oddball a little bit in a different episode, especially when we talk about the kingdom itself and the map and whatnot. Now, the Mariner it's a weird place, right? It's a very weird profession to stick in here. And I still don't get it. To me, it feels slightly out of place. But they were aiming for 10 professions, and I'm assuming aiming for 10 professions, and this one just fit in there. Okay, cool. I'll take it. Agility is the primary thing, and just as you can imagine from a Mariner, everything that's related to open water, right? So swimming, hunting, fishing, seamanship, acrobatics and awareness. I could see that. Those are kind of helpful things, especially when you're on a ship rocking back and forth. Sea legs is your heroic ability. Once again, we'll cover that later on. And a lovely, wonderful array of starting gear. So once again, man, I really love this artwork. It's got just a classic feel to it. It's not edgy. It's not super edgelord, emo-y. I don't even know if emo is a thing anymore. But it just, there's something natural, something organic about it that just seems practical and pragmatic, which I kind of lean towards. Then we got the Merchant. So the Merchant is our, eighth profession. And this profession is really kind of geared towards, as you can imagine, bartering, bluffing, making the deal, persuasion. This is, I would say, more than any other profession, this one definitely relies heavily on charisma, obviously. This is your face. If you're familiar with that term, he is the face for your team. He's the one that's always going to be doing the talking, the wheeling and dealing and trying to get you guys out of trouble, unless you just want to get into fights, and then you just let him do his thing so he can go ahead and try to wheel and deal and use his ability and say, thank you for your effort, but we're going to go ahead and murder hobo these guys. He has a heroic ability, Treasure Hunter, which is going to be one of those that's going to stand out. It's one I read, and I was kind of impressed with it. Not totally like, oh my God, this is the greatest ability ever, but it's a nice, I would say, boon, if you will, for an adventuring party. So I think, at first people are going to be turned off. The profession doesn't look like a fighter class, and it's not really a fighting class. It is everything else. It is kind of a utilitarian profession when it comes to when you're adventuring, either in town or in those dungeons or the keeps or anywhere where some of your abilities won't come into play, but other ones like spotting hidden stuff, searching and whatnot is really going to become a key ability to finding those hidden rooms, finding those traps, that sort of thing. So in a way, they're kind of they're not quite a rogue, they're not quite a bard, they're somewhere in between. Then we got the Scholar, looking all dapper in his noble mallard clothing there. The Scholar they're kind of similar, I guess, in a way to the merchant profession. Not really a combat one, but they provide the real benefit comes in all the lore abilities, all the lore skills that they have that could provide a great benefit. I mean, and also as an extra damage dealer, they could run up there and stab people with their knives or hit them with their clubs, or if they happen to have a crossbow or bow or whatever, they can really kind of aid in combat. They're not a DPS or a tank. They're just kind of a support character. But as we all know from mangas, isekais, TV shows, movies, you need the support characters. You can't ignore their unique abilities and the great qualities that they bring to an adventuring group. So they've got intellect or intelligence being their primary attribute. You've got skills, the good ones like awareness, which is great for detecting ambushes and such. Beast lore, bushcraft, which is very good, especially if you don't have a hunter. Evade, definitely good if you are not, since you're not really a fighting class. Healing, which is definitely good if you don't have a mage, but you have somebody with healing. You can sit there during your stretch rest or full, I'm just going to call it the full rest or a long rest. And there is another one. It's much shorter. You take like a round during a stretch, and you guys can do a little recovery. Languages, myth and legends, which I think is very important, and spot hidden, another very vital clue or a skill. Then you have the heroic ability of intuition, which can probably be very good. So we got the thief. Once again, we're back to the halflings being kind of the stereotype. And there's a reason why things are a stereotype. Stereotypes are like just like tropes. They're there. They exist. They exist. They exist for a reason. There's something that has led to not all stereotypes, certain stereotypes to exist. Halfling is one of them, halfling thieves. So, of course, we got agility is their key attribute, acrobatics, awareness, bluffing, evade, knives, sleight of hand, sneaking, spot hidden. And their heroic ability is the classic backstabbing. Right now, I can tell you that backstabbing, now their heroic ability is slightly different from the regular backstabbing. I believe that anybody can do a backstab if they're in position to do so. I believe it causes double dice damage. Now the thief, and we'll get into that a little later. The thief's abilities probably magnifies that or multiplies that value from a double, maybe to triple or quadruple. We'll see how that goes. They might even have the ability to be face to face and be able to perform a backstab. So we'll see how that goes. I'm kind of excited to see what's different between that backstab and the backstab action that you can perform in combat. So right now, they're another one of those very niche kind of classes or professions that has a lot of very detailed or very focused skill sets, but they're definitely going to be vital. Once again, they're not a big close range fighter. They're the ones that are going to run up when you're not your knight or your fighters, you're duking it out. And he's going to go up and just kind of knife somebody in the kidney or in the back. And just, they're not a major damage dealer, but they help multiply the overall effect of like the fighter or the knight. Or even I would say the artisan is probably your third tier, if you will, of a frontline fighter. Where a knight's going to tank, the fighter's going to be like a vanguard or DPS. And the artisan's going to kind of follow somewhere in there because of his strength being the primary attribute and his broader range of close combat skills. And the hunter and the mage being kind of a key long-range fire support. So that covers the professions for the Dragonbane RPG. The next video that's probably going to be out on Friday, we're going to cover the more on the heroic abilities. We're going to cover skills, and I might do a third video that day that covers all the spells. So stay tuned for that. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and I will chat with you guys later. See ya.